Welcome back, Billiken fans. It's Zach Miller and Peter Hale. This is the Midtown Madness podcast. We have another special guest for you this week. We're actually going to kind of move away for a minute from our recruit, our commit interviews, and we're going to actually bring in Colin Suhre. He is the voice of Billiken Baseball. If you have watched, and softball for that matter, if you have watched any of the games on ESPN Plus, he does a fantastic job as a single man in the booth. Fantastic. Because he's the voice of the Billikens, we're going to bring him in for our baseball segment, and we're actually going to lead off with it first. And he's going to discuss everything that goes into calling the games, producing the games, and then what he's seen from the best seat in the house for every A10 home game. Pete, after my long introduction, how are we doing this week?
Doing all right. It's always a busy weekend, springtime with young kids, but it's good. And it seems like even though it's been a crazy off season, maybe things are kind of starting to slow down a little bit. I felt like we were reeling at this time last week, but we had just found out that Yuri was staying, and not a whole lot has happened since then. Or am I wrong?
I don't think so. I mean, a few things. Recruits on campus, and we'll get into that. But yeah, I do want to point out some pod stuff that's happened. I've noticed a trend over the last couple weeks and maybe months, but it's odd. Our YouTube is really starting to become a popular way to watch our show I guess ingest our content, so to speak. That sounded horrible. It sounded much better up in my mind. But
Consume.
people are in consume. Sorry, consume our content. Pete, I'm becoming a little more self conscious of what I wear every day. Like every time I want to wear something different, so people don't think that I own one thing.
Yeah, and you look great. You look great. I
Okay.
gotta say, I probably need to step it up a little bit in that regard. I normally Sunday night, I am just absolutely exhausted. I shower at night because long day out with kids in the sun and the heat today, and I just throw on like right now I've got my uncle's Fenton Fire Department T-shirt on.
There we go. Shout out
It
Fenton Fire Department.
Yeah, he just retired not too long ago, about a year ago. But anyway, yeah, I think I probably have to step it up a little bit if we are now being viewed by more people than we are being listened to, or at least it's getting even.
I just like to always have something kind of something different Billiken related. I just think it's cool to show. I'm
Yeah.
obviously it's self-serving in that I get to show off my collection, because my collection is like I I would probably not be in the poorhouse if I didn't have this collection. But yeah, it's
You have many, many, many pieces. I can vouch for that.
But no, I clearly we'll talk about Billiken baseball. I spent a lot of my weekend at the games or watching the games. It was
Yeah.
so much fun this weekend, and we're gonna get into it with Colin Suhre right now. Billiken fans, as I promised, we are bringing in. We like to bring in again. I talk about the content that you didn't know you wanted, and I think that the people that are adjacently involved with Billiken sports and producing Billiken sports have such interesting stories and have so many things they can tell Billiken fans that maybe you don't know about and you're gonna find interesting. So we're bringing in the voice of Billiken baseball and softball, Colin Suhre. Colin, welcome to the Midtown Madness, man.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. Love SLU sports and love to talk it. So great to be here.
I'll kick us off. Where are you from, man? Are you from the area? How'd you end up here? What's
So
up?
I'm from Wisconsin, but my family is all from here, and so moved down here at the start of middle school. So I've lived a majority of my life in the St. Louis area with strong ties, but got my roots still in Wisconsin with some of my sports rooting interests. But a lot of that goes by the wayside once you get into the business side of it. So.
So then, where'd you end up at school then? If you kind of split your upbringing between there and St. Louis?
So I was always a Big Ten guy. Always wanted to go to a Big Ten school, and in state tuition a little bit cheaper at the University of Illinois, even though I was a diehard Wisconsin Badger fan growing up. So was thinking I was going to be like pre-med and all that stuff. So started off in microbiology there and then transferred back to SIUE. And that's when I met Joe Pott, who now hosts pre and post game on KMOX radio for the Cardinals. And he was a huge influence in getting me into this business.
So did you switch your major over then?
No, actually never switched my major over or anything. So I took a couple of communications classes here and there, but never formally really went to school for it.
As a communication major, I also only took a couple of communications classes. So you practically have a communication degree. So just, fair play. Who were your pro sports rooting interests as an early life Wisconsinite?
So it was wherever my Wisconsin Badgers ended up, really. So big fan of the Seahawks until recently, with Russell Wilson being traded to the Broncos, and was actually kind of a childhood Broncos fan. So that one didn't have Wisconsin affiliation. I loved those Elway, Ed McCaffrey teams, Terrell Davis, Bill Romanowski, John Lynch. Loved all those guys. But for the most part, yeah, just really follow my college guys, and wherever they go, root for their team success, but mostly the individuals.
So you talked about his name was I'm sorry, the gentleman over at SIUE,
Joe Pott.
Joe Pott. How did you kind of get involved with working with him, and how what kind of doors did he open for you? Where did he make the connection?
Oh, he opened all kinds of doors for me. So I was just kind of searching for what my passion was in life, and I knew I always loved sports. Instead of going home and doing my homework or whatever I was supposed to be doing, I was watching the NBA playoffs or whatever was on at that particular time. So Joe Pott was kind enough to kind of bring me in and let me start doing some sideline reporting with the SIUE soccer teams, and that was a lot of fun. They were very successful at the time under Mario Sanchez, who moved on to Michigan State. But anyway, Joe Pott was just tremendous to me, just a great person, even beyond how good of a broadcaster he is. And one day said, "Hey, we got a volleyball match that no one is here to call play-by-play for. Would you mind doing that?" And I had enjoyed the sideline reporting, but the second that I called that volleyball match, it was, whoa, this is it. This is what I was meant to do. So ever since then, I've just kind of been all in on it.
Do you have any of like the original audio or anything from those?
We don't want to go back to that. So I was actually reminiscing with one of my friends, Mario Sanchez. The poor guy was kind enough to meet with me multiple times and get me familiar with the program and everything. And I was so nervous that I botched his name on the very first sideline report that I ever did. And I'll never forget Paul Dotson walking up to me after that saying, "Hey, you'll have the blooper tape of this one when you make it one day or wherever you end up." So that's one that definitely is in the memory bank. But we don't save the tape of that one. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. Unfortunately, you can't get rid of anything these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't only remember it.
I think in my non-career as a sports media, whatever the hell I do, I have no idea. But I did call one men's Billiken soccer game on radio, internet radio, and I gotta say, it's hard. It's really difficult. First of all, I don't have the best eyes. That's why I'm wearing glasses or contacts. But it's hard if you haven't done your research. You don't know the other team well enough to say this person's bringing it up the left side. Now you do baseball a little bit easier because the positions are much less fluid. But how big of a learning curve was that, and what is your strategy?
It's a huge learning curve, and all the sports are different. Soccer, for example, I've had the pleasure of doing a couple of fill-in soccer games for St. Louis University as well a couple of years ago. And, especially what you're talking about, if you don't know the team by heart, if you don't know their positions, they may be wearing a jersey where you can't see the numbers very well, and you never know exactly what your vantage point is going to be as a play-by-play broadcaster. So that's all kind of on you to do that research like you talk about. And in baseball, certainly in terms of in play, things are a little bit more set and concrete. You know what position everybody's going to be in, you know what base everyone's on before the pitch comes. So it's not as dynamic in that regard, but there's so much more downtime compared to a lot of other sports. If you don't come with some stories, if you don't come with some background info, something to tie it all in and keep everyone engaged, um, I'll just be honest, it's a sport that as a broadcaster, if you don't bring it, it can get a little bit, on the not as exciting side of things. Let's put it that way.
Interesting enough, I want to well, I got 2 points, but first I want to talk about how you fill the time and how do you go from, there was a point in one of your broadcasts where you said, by the way, I listened to half the game on the way home. Sorry, guys, I left it like the 6th inning or whatever. But you, after the grand slam, I had to. But you did this thing where you, like, I think it was the catcher of the other team, and you just you threw in a thing about 15 home runs right on the season. And I was like, that's such a random stat. How do you keep that, like, those little nuggets in there, and how do you kind of
So
piece it
that
together
one,
and put it in?
oh, that's not impressive at all, right
Well, no,
there.
I mean,
Home runs.
it's
I
more
have
the
a lineup
point.
card that Nick
Yeah.
Reddick prints out in front of me. It's got the statistics and everyone's lineup and positions. I keep my own book, of course, and
Right.
if you walk up there, you see I've got notes and everything written out. But my goal really is to, he's the leader on their team in home runs. I should know that he has 14 home runs on the year. Like, Tyler Fogarty is the leader in home runs for the Billikens. Like, I shouldn't have to look at a stat sheet to know that he has 9 home runs and that Fitzgerald is now one behind him after his home run today. You know what I'm saying? That type of thing. But, I try to take pride in even the further details that he's now 3 Michael Carricos, who you're referring to, the catcher for
Mm-hmm.
Davidson, who, by the way, came into the series second in the country and on base at 579.
And he
So
was the
this
one who
guy's a
hit the
dude,
grand slam,
and
right?
he's now only 3 home runs behind the single season all-time record at Davidson. So it's just given that context, why does this matter type thing, I think, is what's important for my role as the broadcaster.
How much are you your broadcast is both video and audio, right? Like people
So
can stream.
these are exclusively ESPN Plus video broadcasts.
I see. Okay. All right. Because I think of, I've only recently thought about this more, the difference between broadcasting for audio specifically and broadcasting for video or television broadcast. When you listen to Rammer, there's not a second of downtime when he's doing a men's basketball game. He's telling you like every pass, every play. It's just, I don't know how he doesn't have to like constantly catch his breath because he's feeling so much. Whereas like when you watch a game on TV, they don't need to say every single pass that goes around the horn. They can throw out a stat in the middle of a possession or things like that. Have you done a lot of audio only, and how different is that process for you?
Yeah, so I kind of started out in the radio side of things. That actually started my connection with St. Louis University. I used to work at 101 ESPN, where Nick Reddick, the assistant sports information director at St. Louis University, also worked. And so that's kind of how he knew, hey, this guy calls games. We need somebody to broadcast here at SLU. And that's how that relationship started for me, which I'm extremely fortunate for, and really appreciate everything that Nick's done for me. But yeah, it's a huge difference. Just when radio, a lot of it is laid out for you. Your job is cut out for you. You just have to keep everybody up to speed with what's going on. You're trying to paint that picture as it's happening because you are their eyes, not only their ear, your everything, your all five senses for that person that's sitting in their car, listening on the radio, or sitting at home. Versus on a broadcast, I've had a lot of people compliment our broadcasts, and I tell them, look, it is so much of these production guys that you don't see behind the scenes that are cutting between these shots, that are reading my mind before I go there, where I'm saying something and then all of a sudden they're showing it, or vice versa, and being on that same page in terms of the video aspect. It's really a creative challenge, and one that when you work with great people like I've had the blessing to on ESPN Plus at SLU, I mean, it makes it so much fun. It's so exciting. Like, I'm amped up. Like, I can't go to sleep after I do one of these ESPN Plus games because I'm just going and so excited to get to work with these people.
You mentioned the people behind the scenes, and one guy who I think everybody has seen around SLU. I believe he started as a cameraman in Chaffetz for the in-house video feed, and now has worked his way up impressively to director at times. Is Bobby Sutherland. Um, if you've seen the long flowing locks of Bobby Sutherland around Chaffetz, that's he really is audio video at SLU. And what does he bring, like, from your perspective, and how much does he help? You mentioned on a grand level, but him specifically.
Well, honestly, he brings everything. And that's what I admire about him the most, and something that I try to take pride in, as I don't want to just be the play-by-play guy. I want to have insight into the production aspect. In fact, I just had him send over a bunch of graphics to work on trying to put together packages for the softball game upcoming this weekend, to see if I can add something on that production side as well. Bobby does a little bit of everything. This guy can do replays. He can direct the show. He can do the audio engineering, anything that you ask of him, like you say. And, I think when you have that perspective of all the different roles, what each person goes through and what's important for that role. That's what makes him so good at what he does. And you don't get to that level unless you put the work in. You just go through it and you have the experience. And it's very clear that Bobby has all of that, because quite honestly, I'm trying to think of somebody just from a production standpoint that I've worked with that's more talented than that guy. And I really can't. So.
I'm curious about what's your kind of workload like with SLU between baseball and softball? Like, what are you doing a week?
So it'll be 3 games on the weekend series for either team, and they have it so that it's staggered. None of them are overlapping, so trying to do 2 at each time, and sometimes it would be a conflict where it would be one or the other in years past. But it typically, the way that I like to do it is, it helps a lot when you're in the season and you're dialed in. But there's a lot of the legwork just goes in before you ever call your first game for the team, just making sure you're familiar with all the different players. And this is another place where I have to give a ton of credit. The coaches, Christy Canoyer and Darren Hendrickson, have been incredible to me in terms of answering my phone calls, providing me information. And everyone thinks I sound so smart. Well, it's because these coaches, who do not have to do this, by the way, are going out of their way to give me a little insight into their team, and kind of make me feel like I'm a part of their team as well. And that's something that's not lost upon me, and something that I truly appreciate. And, another one of the reasons why I love coming out to SLU.
I want to get into kind of what you've seen, being the guy that's seen every game, at least weekend games in the A10, because quite frankly, midweek games, they don't count. They don't exist. They're a fugazi. I don't care. But you did mention that, what did you, Jesus Christ, I get off on these tangents and then I decide that I forget what I was going to ask you. Anyway, since I know the thing that I wanted to ask you earlier was that you mentioned that you did the soccer broadcast, and I was wondering if you got a chance to. I absolutely adore Bill McDermott. I was wondering if you did. Were you off in the side room, or were you able to share the booth with Bill? Because sharing the booth with Bill being in the box with Bill is just a hilarious experience.
I missed the box with Bill. I was off in that side room that you're referring to, but what a place to call a soccer game from out there. Herman Stadium, that is quite the venue, and boy, they packed it with some impressive crowds over this last season. Some of those photos from tournament time, just incredible.
I did remember my question. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but it does seem like the A10 is requiring ESPN Plus broadcasts for the sports like baseball and softball, if it's feasible. I guess field hockey not really doesn't really get games on ESPN Plus. Volleyball's tough with the other sports. But it seems like the A10 went out of their way to make the schedule so that the teams were never like the softball and baseball were never playing at home at the same time. Do you have any insight into that?
I actually don't, and that's a great question because I noticed that exact same thing coming into this year, where years previous there had been some of those conflicts where both were at home, but it has been staggered this year, and it would only make sense, right, that there would be some kind of conference affiliation, and we would all get on the same page with, hey, what's the most efficient and effective way to do this? And it seems like they've certainly figured that out.
Will you be doing sports for SLU other than baseball and softball moving forward?
So I have done volleyball as well for SLU, and then I filled in from time to time doing some basketball broadcasts. I had a chance to call some of the preseason tournament that was kind of put together at the last second during COVID when LSU and SIUE, and it was St. Louis College of Pharmacy, I believe, was the fourth team in the mix there. Got
Yeah.
a chance to call some of those games that were on ESPN Plus. So yeah, I've had a chance to do a few other things, but volleyball has been the other sport that I've been with consistently.
I want to start with baseball and then get over to softball. But what you've obviously seen this team more than 99% of the people in the city. What's something about this SLU baseball team that you can tell people that they may not know?
It's a great product, in a day and an age where it's the three true outcomes: strikeout, walk, home run, deep counts, 4-hour games. This is a pitching staff for SLU that attacks hitters. They're in the zone. They have, and the strength of the team is their defense. They play phenomenal defense in the field, and so their pitchers play to that. They attack hitters. They make sure that they put the ball in play, and maybe not the biggest strikeout staff compared to some of these other teams in the A10, but it is exciting. They keep the defenders on their toes, and they're more than up to the task. We've seen some incredible middle infield defense from this team. And, on the other side of things, when they come to the plate, they don't strike out. They put the ball in play. They make the opposing pitchers work. It's just good baseball for the most part. And you can tell that, with a formula like this, it's what Darren Hendrickson has done to be so successful over the course of 15 years and make himself the all-time winningest coach in Billiken's history.
What about softball? What do you think makes the softball program unique that you've seen?
I love Christy Canoyer's emphasis on academics and just being great in general. It doesn't have to just be softball, and it's a great softball team. They're 13-7 right now in A10 play, but Sadie Wise up for the senior class award, exemplary in the classroom, character. She's an occupational therapist. She does work, in the community, and then comes out to practice and is working with the community, then playing in the community, And those are the kind of stories. She's a Kirkwood native that are so much fun to follow on this team. A Gabby Kowalik that Christy Canoyer talks about is such a program changer for this team. Her sister is a star over at Kentucky, and the Kentucky Wildcats are actually going to come to the Billiken Sports Center next year and play. So they're going to get to hopefully face off against one another, and that should be a tremendous scene. But the way that Christy Canoyer has built a team that, of course, it bleeds onto success on the field. The priorities start in the classroom. The priorities start in your community, in the way that you represent that St. Louis University jersey. And I can't say enough about how impressed I am by all of those young ladies on that team. And it's fun too to watch some of those older players that I've described kind of set the tone for the younger players and watch them pick up on it and that development, not only on the field, but character wise and the way they carry themselves. So it's really been fun to follow.
All right, we're gonna dive in to this week's games. Well, we're gonna dive into the weekend games, as I said. But first, we'll talk about I'm gonna run you through the Missouri State game. 13-5 loss at Missouri State included a Billiken grand slam from Kyle Fitzgerald. Again, midweek game. I mean, the game went on. I think they were by the third or fourth inning. They had used 6 pitchers across both teams. You can only watch so much of that. I swear to God, I will criticize a lot of things. I will never criticize the lack of TV for a midweek baseball game. It is, no offense to you, but it is pointless to pay people for 5 hours for that.
Well, I mean, it's just tough when your priority are those conference games and you get to this time of year and you got certain guys that you want to keep fresh but have other guys in the bullpen. But beyond any of that, it was a pretty good game from SLU. They just kind of ran into a wall in that 7th inning with their bullpen. They were up 5-4 going into those final 3 frames. So, altogether a pretty impressive performance against what has been traditionally a powerhouse in the MVC, one of the better conferences in Division I baseball.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that, actually. The Missouri Valley is a really, really good baseball program. But let's move on to the weekend. Logan Schmidt, I believe he started this. No, he did not. He did start this game.
Yep, Friday.
He got the win. He got the win versus Davidson, 6-5. Cameron Farrer gets the save. Run Billiken fans down for us. Do my job, please, and run Billiken fans down how this played out and how the Billikens got the win.
Oh, it was a tremendous win. One of the best games played by the Billikens all year long. Logan Schmidt was great. We had a weather delay after about 3 innings of this game, and it was scoreless to that point. And when we came out of the delay, the starter for Davidson, who was touching 97 in the summer in the Coastal Plain Leagues, Coastal Plains League, by the way, yes, Nolan DeVos. The Billikens were finally able to get to him a little bit coming out. He ended up giving up 4 runs. I believe it was over 5 innings. And then Logan Schmidt, just a tremendous job to lock things down coming out of that delay. He was great for the first couple of innings. They finally got to him a little bit in the 6th, I believe it was, for their first couple of runs. And then, great work out of the pen by the freshman Jack Weber. It was 3 consecutive hits from the bottom of their order in the 7th inning for Davidson, and Weber was huge in putting out that fire and bridging that gap to Cameron Fair, who you talked about picking up that save at the time. That was his 7th save, tying Gabe Levy of Davidson for the A-10 lead. But altogether a gritty performance from this Billikens team. Matt Torino makes a diving grab out in center field with runners on the corners and 2 outs in the top of the 8th inning. If he doesn't make that catch, the Billikens go down 7-6, and we could be talking about a completely different story. Just a phenomenally entertaining game, and one that I know sent Billikens fans home extremely happy.
Well, and you became kind of a viral star for this game, right? You
Well,
went
no,
viral.
no, no, no. Lucy and Frank became viral stars.
Yes, but they needed a soundtrack.
They
The
did. They
the
did.
viral moment needed a soundtrack, and you provided the dulcet tones.
Well, I did, but again, I have to give a ton of credit to our production crew. Just some of those close-ups of the Ducks walking right at you across the foul line. I mean, it's certainly an experience that I'll never forget about. Now, here's something else about me. I'm a big like nature person. In specifically birds. I love birds. So I did a golf tournament last year where I broadcasted. There's a lot of downtime. You call a golf tournament, kind of turned it into like the nature channel for a minute. Hey, let's look up what are the different kinds of wildlife in this area. Let's give people an idea, what are we looking at here, and then bring it back to some golf. So I really appreciated the opportunity to bring that to the SLU broadcast a little bit.
How much time did you actually have to fill when that was going on?
I think it was about 2 minutes, somewhere in there.
That's
Hey,
a
I'll say
really
this. I
long
was
time.
searching a little bit. I didn't quite get into my full-on Kevin Harlan, really get after it for the random event taking place, a streaker, for example, maybe. But no, it was a great moment for sure.
I think you like undersell yourself though, because like John Boy Media picked that up. You sent it to me, and I was having phone nightmares at that point. I was like, "Get it out on Instagram. Get it out on our Instagram," and my phone would not work. But like, so I don't actually think I've seen the whole video. But if you mess that up, like if you're bad on the mic, that doesn't play as well, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I was a
I'm
little
not
bit
trying to get
proud
you
to
to,
see that
yeah, I'm not
under
trying to get
under
you.
the generic that we all expected Randy Johnson joke, the next highest liked comment was great play-by-play, to be honest. Like, hey, like the play-by-play guy kind of like stuck with it here. So I'm glad people appreciated that maybe.
Where did the name Lucy and Frank come from? Is that just
Bobby Sutherland. I'm telling you, these are my guys. Like he's in my ear. Like we're having a
did
conversation
he
that might
name
not
them?
be verbal throughout the broadcast the entire time. So, just what I'm talking about and he's listening to, we might not be actually talking to each other, but there's this level of communication that's going on. And I'm telling you, there's no one better that I've worked with than that man. I mean, he's just got this crazy knack. There's a certain level of instincts in this business that certain people just have or don't, and that guy's got it.
Let's talk about Lucy and Frank for another 15 minutes. No, let's get into game two of the series. And unfortunately, it did not go the way of the Billikens. Trevor Harris gets the loss in this one, a 9-2 Davidson win in this one. Tell Billiken fans how it happened.
Yeah, so this game was a little bit of what Coach Hendrickson prior to this series was looking to avoid. A great performance on the mound by Blake Healy. He punched out 10, I believe it was, in that game, and that was the thing for the Billikens, especially when you know that there's going to be a lot of wind and weather affecting play. Put the ball in play and put the pressure on the defense to make those plays, and the Billikens just unfortunately weren't able to do enough of that. It was an impressive gutty performance by Trevor Harris on the mound, but eventually in that ninth inning, Davidson cracked the scoreboard for 6, so that final score makes that game look like maybe Davidson, blew out SLU, but it was certainly not the case. That was a one-run ball game entering the ninth inning, and again, really high intensity. Gabe Levy, who we talked about, Cam Fair had tied for the lead in saves. He took that right back in game 2 in the series. He went 2 1/3 innings out of the pen. And, for all the swing and miss stuff that Blake Healy brought at the start of that game, Levy didn't necessarily have that, but it was, again, that attacking mentality that we talked about, so important in the game of baseball. And it served them well when he picked up that 7-out save for his 8th of the year to jump back on top of Fair.
Uh, pretty crazy weather this weekend.
Oh,
Um, I mean, it's like what the Chaffetz hook came into play yesterday's game. I thought the rain was coming, and then it just never did. What was it like for you production wise, uh, not having a press box and having to deal with the weather? How do you deal with that day to day or game to game?
uh just as it comes, really. And it's one of those things that I really embrace. I love a good challenge, of just anything, holding down a tent with one hand and trying to call the game and score it with the other. Like, there's something about that. It might not be ideal, but it's like a challenge to myself. Like, hey, how can I do the very best in this situation, no matter what? So, it's something different. It might be the wind, it might be the rain, it might be, the tent's supposed to be there to help you, and sometimes it's flying away and you have to grab it by one hand and try to yank it back. And it is what it is. So, um yeah, just try to keep that mindset of, hey, how do I do the best that I can by the people that are watching, because that's who this is for, by at the end of the day.
The anti Ranch Wilder from Angels in the Outfield.
I guess. No, Bobby will let you know. I had a little bit of a diva moment in, I think it was either game one or two of the series. There was a play where I was screened by the canopy that I was sitting underneath, and I couldn't see the out, and I'm in the talkback just getting after it, and obviously not directed at anyone specifically, but just frustrated, like, hey, I'm the play-by-play guy, like, I need to know what's going on out here. But it happens from time to time.
Let's run down game three. This one, man, I so badly wanted it for the Billikens. Obviously, as a Billiken fan, I want every game, but this one just the Billikens scratched and clawed, and they got in some trouble in the later innings in the bullpen, and it went away. 13-7 loss in this one. Uh, Jack Weber gets the loss in relief, unfortunately. Uh, give Billikens fans a little more in depth on this one.
So this is one that, if you were a Billikens fan, you had to be feeling so good coming into the fourth inning. The way that this game started, you're going up against the A10's leader in ERA. The Southpaw, Ryan Fezco, has just been outstanding for Davidson, and it's that same thing, had come in as one of the nation's leader, top 50 in the country in strikeout to walk ratio, over a 5.5 strikeout to walk ratio, meaning for every six strikeouts, he's only walking one guy. And so the Billikens were actually able to draw some walks against him and chase him after three innings. It was a 4-0 lead to begin the game for Davidson, and the Billikens just gritty, clawing back into the game. And, back to that reliever situation where we talked about Gabe Levy, who leads the conference in saves. Well, he's been tag teaming with Bennett Flynn, who was outstanding in game one of the series. And he had gone three innings, I believe it was, but he kind of breezed through those three innings, and he was available for game three. But it was a situation where you're thinking, hey, we get into the bullpen quick if you're the Billikens, and you've kind of already knocked out their two big guys. Here we go. And Ryan Kutz just came in and slammed that door absolutely shut. And this is a guy who in game one did
Was
not
terrible.
retire a single batter.
Terrible.
He gave up a couple of walks, I think it was, and a hit, and was chased from the game without retiring one batter. And he bounces back and goes longer than the starter, Ryan Fezco, the leader in the A10 and ERA, and picks up the win for Davidson. So that gives you an idea. That's why this is the number one team in the conference, right? In the Wildcats. they've just got so many of these guys that they can turn to. 3 studs in the starting rotation, 3 guys in the bullpen that they can turn to. And that's something that Coach Hendrickson tried to impress upon me was, look, you look at the offensive numbers for these guys. Yeah, they're great. They play in a hitter's ballpark, and look what these pitchers are doing. And I think it was that pitching edge in the end that allowed the Wildcats to come up with a series win.
Yeah, it was definitely a tale of two games. So Friday night, you have Ryan Kutz, who has an absolute shocker. Jack Weber is the hero for the Billikens. And then in this one, Kutz is lights out, and Weber has a bit of a nightmare.
And that's how the game of baseball can be, right? Any given day, you just never know. And that's why it's so much fun to come out to a baseball game. You can have the script all in your head. Hey, ERA leader in the A10 going up against Scott Youngbrand, a guy who has just risen to the occasion in big game after big game in his career. We're going to have 2 guys going deep. Well, Youngbrand went pretty deep in the game. He's been so good at giving the Billikens innings all year long. But for Fezco, he gets chased early from the game. And then again, you have that script in your head of how you think things might go. Kutz turns it on its heels. And there you go, So it's just such a game of momentum. The Billikens had their chances. Now, there are a lot of moments in this series, especially in games 2 and 3, runners in scoring position where they weren't able to bring home that guy. And against a really good team, instead of underperforming with runners in scoring position, overperforming with runners in scoring position is usually going to be the thing that puts you over the top. And it just wasn't there at the plate for the Billikens in those situations in this series.
Yeah, and to put this in larger context for people, Davidson's very good. We talked about this in our what Zach titled the SLU Twitter think tank about a month ago, if it's even been that long. Carter Chapley mentioned that Davidson was going to be awesome this year. Like he was like, they're the team to beat in conference. They've got a great, facility. They've got a great team this year. They could be an at-large team. They're really good. They're 33-9 overall, 12-3 in conference. So you're just as likely to be swept by them as you are to even pick off a single win. So it's not it's not embarrassing to walk away with a single win against these guys by any means. So obviously you'd like to have a few of those innings back this weekend, but I think it was a solid performance.
No, and the results are one thing, and then the way that it happens is another as well, right? And the Billikens proved more than competitive against Davidson in this series. I would say competitive to the point to where, anything could have happened. It could have been a sweep for one side or a sweep for the other if just a couple of things go different here or there. But you talk about this being a Davidson team that people expected to be good coming into the year. Okay, well, they didn't expect a guy like Michael Carrico, who hit under 250 last year, to be one of the best offensive players in the nation, came in with an OPS over 1,400 into this series. That was a guy that was barely over 200 playing the catcher position. So that's also, offensive production from a defensive premium spot where sometimes you'll give a little on the offensive side to have a guy who's just really good behind home plate. Carrico gives you both. And then Wilson, their first baseman as well, another guy who hit under 250 last year. And these are both guys making that jump freshman to sophomore year that have provided that extra boost for Davidson that just, has made them, quite honestly, the clear-cut team out in front in the conference this year.
Let's first of all, thank you so much for coming in and giving us such a great perspective on Billiken baseball and perspective on yourself too. I love hearing these stories, and I like to think if I love it, people might love it too. But that's just the narcissist in me. Where can people find you on social media? Your work elsewhere? What else do you got going on?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at ColinPXP. I try to do my best to post my stuff on there. Now, I got to be honest, I'm not good at the social media game. It's just never been, it's never really been my thing. But in between events, when I get some time, I try to throw something up on there, some highlights from the last thing of whatever I did, and hopefully it makes everyone else happy with what's going on. And then hopefully people can be like, hey, this guy maybe, captured that moment well and added to it a little bit or put a nice bow on it. And if I can do that, then that makes me happy to try to bring a little something to these athletes, showcasing their skills and providing us with entertainment that we love so much.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Pete.
I was gonna. And what other gigs in the industry do you have right now besides SLU?
So I am the voice of the Mckendree University Bearcats, a Division II school in Lebanon, Illinois. It's about 30 minutes or so on the east side of the Mississippi River of St. Louis. So they have all kinds of different sports. So I've had the luxury of doing lacrosse, doing all these different types of things through Mckendree, and doing their basketball and football and everything, and that's been a lot of fun. And then I also work for a company called Prepcast, which is owned by Tim Miller, a local guy in the area, and he covers all kinds of high school sports locally in the area, and then some collegiate stuff, particularly JUCO and D3 things. And then I've also done some work for MISHA, so the Missouri State High School Sports Athletic Association, or whatever the the full acronym is. But I had the opportunity to call the Class 6 state title game, with CBC coming away with the win there, which was all kinds of fun, and getting to do that. So truly blessed to get to do some really exciting things, including at SLU.
Will you be calling the George Mason series for softball this weekend?
Yes, I will be there for the George Mason series, and hopefully, like I said, working on some of those graphics and get some little extra bells and whistles to the viewers at home. Hopefully something that's kind of cool.
We'll have to get you back on. Maybe do a softball specific one, or maybe for the conference tournaments. Keep an eye on them, and it's hard. Both of us we're spread so god dang thin. But it's incredible, the time commitment for baseball, to follow college baseball. I can't. It's the Southern States, SEC, MVC. Those fans are insane. So. But no, Colin, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and sharing the insight on SLU baseball.
Well, thank you guys, and anytime I'd be more than happy to come on and provide any insight that you guys would like to know.
Awesome, man. Well, take it easy. Have a great evening.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Colin.
guys as well.
God, Pete, Colin is just fantastic, and he's really, really good at what he does during the games too.
He is, yeah. I mean, you hear it in his voice how much he likes it, how enthusiastic he is for it. You sort of wonder, like with ESPN Plus and the fact that he's doing this for so many other different teams and schools and organizations. You still have somebody who's clearly a fan of the programs, and I like that. We get a little bit spoiled with the Homer broadcasts with Rammer and Earl, and then a lot of times you get the ESPN broadcasts or other neutral broadcasts that can be a little sterile. So it's great to have a good mix of that with him.
Well, since we went through baseball in that interview, we're gonna, and we did it first. We switched it up a little bit. Did baseball first. Let's talk a little bit about their upcoming slate, and then we'll get into men's basketball. Then we'll circle back to soccer and softball. Who do the Billiken baseball team have coming up next, Pete?
Yeah, so they've got a mid-game week. For all that we said about midweek games, mid-game week. All right, but this one's against Rockhurst. And it's on Tuesday the 3rd at 5 p.m. at the Billiken Sports Center, just a one-off. And then they'll head up to Philadelphia for the weekend series, playing the 6th, 7th, and 8th at St. Joe's.
Yeah, hopefully they'll get out of St. Louis, put that the loss in this big 1-2 series behind them, and they can go to St. Joe's and come away with 2 or more wins.
Yeah, which is crucial too, because St. Joe's is one of the 2 other teams that SLU is now locked in a 3-way tie in third with, Rhode Island being the other one.
Is this the right standings now? Not after we got the Riot Act from
yes,
from
yeah,
Darren?
we got the correct standings in front of us. Davidson is first at 12-3, VCU second at 10-5, and then you've got the 3 teams all at 9-6, us, St. Joe's, and Rhodey. And then right behind us, George Washington, George Mason, 8-7. It's a really tight league this year. Davidson does probably have a chance to kind of get some distance between them and the rest, and I think that'll probably happen. St. Bonaventure's terrible; they're 1-14, but it's really like a game separating every place. Other than that, it's pretty tight.
Excuse me. Moving over to men's basketball. I think the biggest news in Billiken land, I do not think we can go through a podcast without talking about this massive news, and that is Fred Thatch's Pickles.
Yeah, I love this. And it did take me a while after I saw that Thatch was doing this new Pickle and Salsa NIL deal to connect it with the fact that pickles were part of his pregame ritual.
I did not understand it either for about 24 hours.
And I'm glad Stu kind of retweeted his article to kind of Thatch, for those who don't remember or don't know, had that health condition where he was getting lethargic and dehydrated. There was something going on with his blood system, and to sort of keep from cramping up, he was eating like sliced turkey and pickles and mustard, I think was the combo before games. And whatever kind of, I don't know all the chemistry or the medicine behind it, but that was helping him not cramp up. And now he's got himself a little pickle NIL deal.
Oh, he's got himself a little pickle.
Stop it. All right. Edit this out.
No chance.
But while Zach,
Charlie Steiner,
while my high school aged co-host gets over this, it's 2 Men in a Garden. It's a local company, and they're great. And I think we've all ordered from them in the meantime. Yes,
I have to shout out 2 Men in a Garden. Awesome. Joel Austin out there on Twitter. I'm sure you saw him interacting. But this is just this has to be the best NIL deal as far as just the right person for the right product. It just happens to be a huge, big time Billiken fan and booster.
Yeah, I think so. I love everything about it. It makes me happy, especially the fact that it's Fred, and with his whole pickle thing, his pregame ritual, that I'm trying not to say something weird or phrase it too weird. I was surprised that his favorite is the bread and butter, though. I would have thought with turkey and mustard, you probably want to go with the dill, but what do I know?
It was a nice little NIL dill.
Boo.
No, it's interesting because so apparently pickle juice has big time electrolytes in it, I believe is the and I'm sure I'm bringing it down to like a very simplistic thing, but yeah, the electrolytes were the one thing that really helped him, I guess, avoid cramping up. I may need to. I've never had a pickle in my life. Fun fact: never eaten pickle in my life. Yeah, no, never.
I had a college roommate who had never eaten an egg.
I've also never eaten an egg.
All right, this is a whole.
Well, I'm allergic to eggs, first of all. Which is why I can't actually. Never mind. We won't get into that.
This is a whole other episode where I just interview Zach, and people will just be dumbfounded by little facts like this. Every day I hear a new one, and I'm just like, wait, what?
No, this is awesome. This salsa pickles. Go check them out. 2 Men in a Garden. By the way, again, shout out Joel Austin. He is the reason I have that picture with the A10 trophy on the Barclays Center floor. He hooked me up with the all access pass. to get on the floor. So shout out him. Great dude. I'm sure you'll be hearing more about their salsa on the program soon. Wink, wink. But yeah, I went up to Deerberg's and got the hot, medium, and mild. I opened the medium. I'm almost finished with the medium. I'm going to go to the hot next. Which ones have you tried, though? I'm curious.
Well, I just got the box yesterday, and my kids like ran it. They were so excited. Whenever a package comes, it doesn't matter what it is. They want to see me open it. And then they saw that it was something they could eat. So I had to right there, right on the kitchen floor. I was like opening up a strawberry salsa. I'm normally not a fruit salsa guy at all, but everybody really liked it. So that was fun.
They were more excited by the salsa than the Billiken baseball jersey.
Oh yeah. Zach sent me a little package Billiken baseball jersey a couple days before that. That got no reaction out of them.
But shout out Darren Hendrickson for just being, because I mean, what a great representative for the baseball program too. Just an absolute, just a top notch coach, top notch guy. Awesome to talk to, and he was great on the show. Go back and listen to our interview with Darren Hendrickson, please. If you enjoyed, Colin on the show, go back and listen to our Hendrickson interview. It's so great, and not because of me or Peter for that matter. I don't. It's all Hendo.
Yeah, he's great.
Now the lesser news in Billiken Land, but still very important. Yuri Collins spoke with Ben Frederickson of the Post-Dispatch this week about his entering the portal and then his subsequent leaving of the portal. We didn't learn much.
We didn't. I feel like everybody's being very cautious with their language. Hendrickson at the end of it, like after Yuri's last quote.
Frederickson, not Hendrickson.
Oh, yeah, of course. Sorry. Cross signals there. But Frederickson said at the end of it, after whatever the last question and answer was, he kind of gave his take, like now that that's over, here's my take, and more or less said SLU did what they needed to do to keep him home. It's going to be interesting. We've talked about the sort of implications, like at a high level, we've talked about the implications of this for the guys who haven't put their names in the portal or as an early draft entry or anything like that, how to maximize their value. Because if a guy is getting, and again, we don't know any details, specifics like that, but we did see a situation like at Miami where the transfer comes in from K-State and very publicly has his NIL deal shared by representation. And then the star player who was not in the portal publicly said, what about me? And was not happy about it. And then the billionaire, John Ruiz, who's funding a lot of that stuff down there, said, I'm not going to I don't renegotiate, take it or leave it kind of thing. And he did, the player did issue a statement a couple of days later, like, not going anywhere. Everything's good. So, you do wonder about situations like that. So hopefully Yuri and everybody else involved is managing this in the locker room, as much as they need to.
I feel like, and actually I want to bring a question to you first, but I feel like at the point where you're saying that if you don't get your deal bumped or you're entering the portal, you don't have any better options. Like, you're bluffing at that point, because if you had better options, you would have entered the portal. Like, why are you just telling people like, if I don't get a bump, I'm gonna see what else is out there? You don't have anything. Like that guy, like, and Ruiz, I'm sure saw that, being the shrewd businessman he is, and was like, go to hell.
Well, I mean, when he tweets, I don't renegotiate. I mean, it's weird to see all of this playing out in public, right? It's very strange. Stuff like this has gone on in college sports over the years in various formats at various levels. I don't want to see
how the sausage is made.
Yeah, and now we all do, and I don't know. Nobody seems to be feeling great about it.
I like seeing salsa made, but not sausage.
That's right. It's a lot cleaner process. But yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see how all these things play out. Right now, it looks like everything's in good shape. on SLU's front. So you feel good about that, and hopefully we'll just round out the roster here and be ready for next season.
Across NCAA, though, we've had first it came down where transfers didn't have to sit out; they could immediately transfer. Is that refresh me? Is that just a one-time deal per player? Or is that just gone? Is that
So
just like
it
open
was
season?
originally you get one immediate transfer, and I don't know if that's changed, or maybe there's a reprieve
With
on it
with
for
everything?
COVID. I wonder
Yes.
if once all the COVID years have kind of worked their way out in a couple seasons, I do wonder if we'll still see that. I
Yeah.
don't mind that guys still have one immediate eligibility transfer and then they have to apply for a waiver thereafter. I don't necessarily mind that.
Yeah. No, I
I don't want to
agree.
see somebody go do 4 schools in 4 years, for example.
No.
I think that's just, it's absurd. It's at some point you've got to kind of slow things down a little bit. And I think
Yeah.
that's one way. Or maybe you only get an immediate uh transfer if there's a coaching change or something
Yeah,
like that.
or freshman year, like 1 year, your
Hmm.
first year, but we'll call it the Fordham rule.
Yeah,
You
or
can
if you like played under a certain amount of minutes or something. I think
exactly,
there
yeah.
there might be
There's
a lot of different ways to
absolutely
justify an immediate transfer,
right.
and not just make it something that you do every year while you're chasing NIL money around.
Exactly. So then the point I was in the question that I was going to get to is, can the NIL, this open season NIL, sur- can this go on while the immediate transfer survives? Do we have to go back to, do we have to, that is that an option moving? Like we kind of got into it already, but
Yeah.
like, I think that maybe, like you said, I think that's a great, the options we kind of presented already. Honestly, I think we answered my question on accident.
Well, I mean, those are all part of the idea, but I wonder about the NIL side, not just the transfer side. I mean, that's one way you can impact the rule on two sides. I
Right.
mean, I say rule loosely. The NCAA has decided to do nothing on NIL, which is
I could see them
embarrassing.
taking. I could see them leaving NIL alone and just going to do that stuff with the transfer, like restricting the transfer market.
Yeah, I mean that's possible. That's a way for them to avoid directly touching NIL, but NIL itself, it's funny because when people were talking about it, and I could think of no moral or logical or any justifiable reason that players cannot receive compensation in some form for their name, image, and likeness. To me, it just seems like very straightforward, but I don't think anybody saw this as just being like publicized. Like I think before we compared it to like PACs, like political
Mm-hmm.
funds, where anybody can kind of pool money together to fund campaigns. I don't think they foresaw it taking that format,
Which it
nor
is.
nor the next level where they're just straight up negotiating deals with players to come play for them for a certain amount of money per year. I think they thought at the very least, like if Nigel Pack is transferring from K-State to Miami, he'd have to say, come to Coral Gables, Mercedes-Benz, or
I
whatever. Like
thought you were going to say
he'd
Coral
have to
Gables
put his
nursing
name on
home.
something. It wasn't just come to Coral Gables and you'll get 2 years, $800,000, period. That's it. Like people are kind of going, okay, well, what does that have to do with name, image, or likeness? You're just paying a dude to play there. And I don't know if that was ever the intent. And it would have been nice if, the NCAA was not so ineffectual and actually said, like, you can't just straight up give a contract. Um, this really is not a GoFundMe campaign from fan bases. Like, there actually has to be some sort of consideration, like Fred Thatch and the 2 Men in a Garden sort of thing. Even if it's on a much larger scale, there at least has to be something having to do with his name, image, or likeness, and not just the fact that he's going to play basketball for you.
Um,
But I don't know. More to come. This is changing so fast.
Speaking of GoFundMe, our podcast Venmo is no. Uh, but yeah, no, I'm. It's complete utter chaos right now.
It really is. Yeah.
And I think that in some way, and I know we texted back and forth about it. I think Travis Ford. We talked about how would Travis Ford react to name, image, and likeness. Is he reacting to it? And we clearly saw that with Yuri Collins. You know, Yeah, I believe the kids call it dropping the bag, I believe, and or securing the bag,
Securing the
depending
bag, yeah.
on who is in what position you are. But I wonder if Travis Ford hasn't already been reactive, right? Um, this roster that we're going to see in how many months? Six, 6 months or something like that.
Yeah, 6.5,
Five.
7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This roster is made up of all St. Louis players. I think there's like 10 of them,
Yeah.
which is the most ever. I don't even have to look that up. I mean, maybe back in like 1922, but this is the most ever in St. Louis in modern basketball history, shot clock era for sure. And I wonder if that's not the reactive nature of Travis Ford to NIL, appealing to the sense that stay home. Maybe maybe it's easier to keep kids around that are playing at home away from being, snagged by bigger programs with bigger NIL pockets.
Well, I think one thing that is not going to change, well, that hasn't changed at least. Programs have 13 scholarships, and people worry about, well, now that there's NIL, can you kind of build out your roster even more? Like, what's stopping Kentucky from having 20 players and just paying those 7 guys without scholarships really nice NIL packages to make it all worthwhile?
Mm-hmm.
The fact of the matter is only 5 guys play at a time, and it's hard to keep it, as we know from the transfers that we've had from the back half of the roster. It's really hard to keep guys 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 happy when they're not playing that many minutes. If you're going now 14 through 20, I don't understand like how that benefits anyone. So there's a finite number of players that can go to any program at any time. So I do agree. Like, I don't necessarily like what this is doing to the competitive landscape. It doesn't necessarily change the dynamic that the big, powerful, moneyed programs are going to stay that way and are going to do what it takes to stay that way. But again, there are just only so many players they can have. So if you're talking about guys like TJ Hargrove, Yuri Collins, who didn't have offers from all of those Power 5 schools out of high school. They didn't. They had a handful of scholarships, and I think that's where SLU can really make a difference. You're a local kid. You've got some options, but not unlimited options, and you're not quite the level player where the Ohio States and Michigans and UCLA's of the world are throwing money at you to come play there. So I think probably that's where it is a stronger selling point to stay home in your big city, large market, and play for SLU.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where that goes, and I think that my theory is that he is, appealing to that sense of representing your city more than go get the bag at wherever wherever Mizzou, whatever you want to say. Women's basketball, not a lot has happened officially.
Well, before we leave.
I'm sorry. Shoot, I my fault. When I do the notes, they stink.
No, it's not
simple.
that.
No. I don't fill it out, and I do it in poor order. And I jumped recruiting transfer to talk about NIL since we were already talking about Collins and Thatch. So
no, you
to...
correctly went with the flow of the conversation. But yeah, just jumping back, we do have not a lot of recruiting transfer news compared to other weeks. We know that SLU is actively recruiting multiple big men. We just, the fact of the matter is Okoro needs help in the front court. I would let me think. So yeah, it is still just Okoro. So yes. We need anywhere from 2 for sure, arguably 3. Like, if you've got somebody who can kind of take a more developmental role, maybe somebody who could get healthy, something like that. I mean, there's different things you could do, but we definitely need to build out the front court around Okoro. One of the options is Andrew Carr. We talked about him a little bit before. He's a transfer from Delaware, just to kind of refresh people's memories. He's from the Philly area, Westchester, Pennsylvania. And it really looked like it was coming down to SLU and Wake Forest. He visited SLU last weekend. He visited Wake Forest this week. Got back home on Thursday. I was really hoping we would hear something on Friday. Um, and we didn't hear anything on Friday. I didn't hear anything over the weekend unless he announces very late here on Sunday night. Um, like I said last week, I think time is our biggest enemy on this and other similar situations these days with the recruiting portal. The more time that he kind of sits in the portal, the more time there is for other schools to jump in and get involved. So that's my fear here, is that it's not just us in Wake Forest, but maybe he got home from Wake Forest and he's starting to get messages from another school or two, and that's what I fear there, because I think it would be a really nice fit. But in the meantime, we had another visitor on campus, and that's got another guy we mentioned before, Mael Crespin from France. So he's on campus as we speak. He was spotted Sunday.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't the one that was able to break that one because I had no idea who the hell it was. In my jog through campus today, decided to get my jog in um, uh, around campus since I was headed to the baseball game anyway. Save some time. And I saw Travis and who I learned to be Mael Crespin heading into Chaffetz Arena. Yeah, so it's exciting to at least see him get on campus. He did make some sort of statement or tweet about his intentions as far as college versus trying to get a pro contract.
It's not necessarily the statement I love to hear, because college, just like, he very much said, like, this is a stepping stone. I want a pro contract. He's young. To be clear, I mean, I think he's just turning 18 or might be about to turn 18. I mean, he's fairly young. The way they do it in Europe, if you look up a guy's name, it gives like his birth year. So he's a 2004 birthday, but regardless,
Jeez.
he's
17.
okay. So he's still
He
17.
will
So
he will turn 18. Um, actually, I want to say he will turn 18. Is he at 2022 or
yeah,
2023?
yeah, no, he would be playing
Wow.
this fall.
Wow. So he would enroll before his 18th birthday.
Yeah, to give you an idea of how young he is. So the potential here is really big. When he's 6'9", 6'10", about 235, inside out player, good skill set, from France. He knows he's going to have pro options, and if that doesn't materialize to be the NBA, he can go back to France, to somewhere else in Europe, Spain, and have a nice career there. He knows that already. So I think the way he worded this was just like, hey, if I go to college, I go to college. If I go to college for a year or two or whatever that is, it's fine. I'm going to be playing pro basketball where somewhere sometime. So even if we do land this guy and he is pretty young, he's good. Don't 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 get too attached. He's not going to be a 4 or 5 year player or anything like that. But hopefully, um, hopefully he sees the value in playing a couple seasons over here, because like we said, he is really young. And if we have him next to Okoro, I think he's a nice complementary piece. I think Carr is the guy who's like more ready today. He's older, he's experienced in college, really trending upward. But Crespin would be a really intriguing player.
I wonder how much of his statement was kind of almost bravado in a way of being, you you look at soccer, it's a bit different, right? But soccer, American colleges look down upon. Maybe that transitions over into basketball a little bit, and that you know maybe it's like maybe he's more thinking about kind of like league him, or like he's goaded here, like among a lot of the high school players, more or less him saying like, I'm gonna go to the league, like
Right.
whereas like, well, college is college, but I really have my sights set on being a pro. Like, it's not so much that he doesn't want to go to college; it's that he's kind of putting on a face of like, I'm pro level. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, and another consideration here is We've been talking a lot about NIL the last few weeks. If I'm not mistaken, international players do not qualify for NIL
Oh my
because they would
God.
lose their student visas. That was pointed out by a poster on Billikens.com this week. Are you Bills fan?
And I think it came up a while ago with he not only did he post it this week, I think maybe he might have posted it back talking about Linson.
Yeah, that's right. And it's a detail I had forgotten, but it's probably something that it's not easy for an international player to come over here and see everybody else making a little money on the side, and they can't do that without giving up their student visa. So I don't know if that's maybe the regulations around that could change. But I wonder if we see a little bit cooling in the international market in the game because of that.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. It's such a weird little twist. Moving over to the women's side, nothing really new as far as real news goes. They did add 2 players according to Rebecca Tillett's Twitter account, but she was vague, did not give absolutely any information other than a fire emoji. I believe it was a fire emoji. It was bright out there today. I couldn't really tell.
Yeah, I'm gonna when we have and of course I'm just getting busy at work again, so I don't know how much time I have to poke around. But sometimes when I hear something like that, I'll try and do a little Twitter sleuthing, searching different word combinations that kind of help you come up with somebody who may have committed recently. So I'm gonna try and dig into that and see if I can't find something.
That's the one real downside for having a college that shares a name with a city.
Yes,
And is
very much
often
so.
abbreviated, and
Yeah,
then
that
that
oh,
yeah, it's
I mean, the search combinations are endless when you're St. Louis University and you don't have a more distinct name like I don't know, Marquette or something like that.
Radford even,
Yeah,
like that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
one that comes to mind. I don't know why, but um, Rebecca Tillett though was on Chris May's podcast where he interviews current players and coaches. And if you want to get to know her a little more, there's not a lot of news in there. It's just a little bit more of kind of her background, her philosophies. So go check that out if you're so inclined. Soccer, the new locker rooms. We talked a little bit about how they had a ribbon cutting for it last weekend. I got a little look see inside this past weekend, or this I think yesterday. Awesome, absolutely unbelievable. I mean everything from there's so many like Billikens everywhere in there. Like just the logoed stuff is just obviously off the charts in my mind. Even like the showers have like etched Billikens in on the doors, which is kind of cool. I don't know. It's just
It
nice.
is. It now, the more that we build that has the new logo, the one that's right
Yes.
here over my shoulder, if you're watching on YouTube, the more you realize like it's really a big deal to change your branding and your logos. Because like we're about to build another, the Champions Center that's going to have that everywhere.
Yes.
And you kind of go through it and start realizing like, oh man, yeah, we're going to stick with this logo for a while. So I hope people like it.
I will go to my grave saying that this logo is far and away better than the last one as far as your branding on things goes. So
Yeah.
yeah, the old Billiken was cool and like kind of like kitschy and whatever, but like this looks really good on hats, really good on shirts. It's symmetrical. It fits in and everything. It looks good on this Mexican skull that I got 2 years ago in Mexico. Cool. Anyway, it's fun. I just wanted to show that one off.
Yeah, no, it really pops on merchandise. I completely agree. I still have not come around to it as the physical
Oh, yeah.
mascot. I don't know. I think that is terrifying to children, but I think in every other regard,
Bunch of
I
wussies.
really like it. I really
It's
like
that
it.
participation trophy generation, man.
Oh, here we go.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Men's soccer got a commitment this weekend or week. Tell us a little bit about the kid they get. I mean, what position? Who is it? What's his name? What's he play? Where's he from?
Yeah, he's a defender from he'll be a class of 2023, I guess. Cole Doherty out of Dallas, Solar Soccer Club, which is MLS Next Elite program. So which is tough to do in a market like Dallas to make it on a club like that. Seems like a pretty big deal to me. I don't know a ton about him. Just the little bit that we found. His tweet committing was really, really nice. Excited and humbled to announce that I've committed to further my academic and athletic career at St. Louis University. And, he goes on to thank everybody. But yeah, he's a 6 foot tall defenseman and looks like a pretty good prospect.
Fantastic. I'm excited for men's soccer season. I think it's just unbelievable with this, the locker rooms. Everything is trending upwards. I know Kalish is not even close to being done with what he wants improved on the soccer stadium side. He's got some really cool ideas that I've heard, and stay tuned because if you like, that's one of those programs that is give them help if you can. That men's and women's soccer program in that stadium, that could be like, that has the highest ceiling, I think, of anything that's underserved and underdeveloped. It really could be a special place. And Kalish and Katie Shields are clearly the right people to take both those programs, Pete.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we can't say enough about how much we like those programs right now.
Let's run down the softball results and notes. Pete, go ahead. They had a midweek game at Mizzou.
They did, yeah. Just another midweek game.
A little bit more exciting than like baseball midweek. They're more entertaining by far.
The midweek softball games.
Yes, by far.
So why is that?
So softball, so as it has been explained to me, pitching in softball is much easier on the shoulder, right? So
right. So you have a shorter rotation.
I believe only 2 pitchers have pitched for the Billikens this year: Chloe Wendling and Taylor Hockman. So you really don't, and it's usually like Chloe Wendling will start, and if they need relief, Taylor Hockman will come in. Hockman starts, needs relief, Wendling will come in. So you don't have so many players that need reps, right? More of your reps are players more of your like underclassmen reps are in the field. So one of the big culprits of those lengthy games on the baseball side are staff games. And that's, you have Hendrickson or whatever baseball coach coming out to the mound 4 and 5 times in the game, just specifically to remove the pitcher, right? We're not talking about mound visits. We're not talking about, double switches, anything like that, pinch hitter, none of that. We're talking specifically pitching changes. There could be up to 10. I mean, it could be, 9 pitchers could pitch in a game.
Right.
So you've got more warm-ups, the fielders, sometimes you're getting reps from players that aren't as good in the field or as seasoned in the field. So you've got errors. You've got a lot of stuff that extends the game. Softball, less players on the roster. And it's a crisper game in the midweek.
I think that's a good way to describe it. The smaller field, the shorter distance from the mound, everything about it is, like you say, crisp. It's just like bang bang. It's almost like it's just like a faster, more compact version, like the arcade version almost. That's just like more fun. I love it. I mean, it's one of those things like it's
like Baseball Street.
Yeah, that's right. It's when it's on, because it's on actually a lot on like the various ESPN networks in the spring, because when it's usually happening in the afternoon when not a whole lot of other stuff is on. So you go to out to a late lunch or something like that, and I guarantee, like at the sports bar, multiple TVs have women's softball on. I never change it when I see it on. It's a good product.
I can't wait for the Women's College World Series.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I get into it every year, even though I'm like not trying to follow it. I'll like catch a little bit of it and be like, this is fun.
Yeah, like I
Um,
mean, I recall like some of my favorite times watching sports when I was, I'm sure this says more about me than anybody wants to know, but 12, 13, like Kat Osterman, Jenny Finch, like,
mhm,
they were like, that was awesome. Those girls were doing it.
yeah,
And that was like a big thing. It felt big. And the women's college, I mean, ESPN does a great job covering it. Oklahoma City's a great venue for it. And games are just fast. They're an hour and a half, and we're on to the next one. It's awesome.
yeah. Yeah, and the reason we're not running down these SLU games, with our special guest Colin, they were all road games this week, so they weren't ones that he had seen in person or anything like that. But we did on Tuesday have a 9-3 loss at Mizzou.
Looked
Uh,
good for a few innings there.
it did, and Chloe Wendling ultimately wound up with that loss. Mizzou took a 3-0 lead with 3 runs in the third to get on the board. And then SLU came back in the fourth with a ground rule RBI double. And then Mizzou wound up with 3 more in the bottom of the fourth to go up 6-1. SLU got a couple back in the fifth, and they just kind of went back and forth after that. It ended up 9-3. Like I said, Chloe Wendling got the loss, and just a midweek one off at Mizzou, and that's how it went down.
Yeah, it was nice to see them play. I mean, the stadium difference is just out of this world.
Yeah.
It's the difference is just incredible. Saturday they played a doubleheader, 3-1 loss at George Washington, and then a 6-3 loss in game 2. Pete.
Yeah, 6-3 loss in game 2. Chloe Wendling had the loss in the first one, and Hockman took the loss in the second one here. Sorry, pulling up the
Yeah,
the little box score right now. Um, yeah, George Washington is for one a really good team. They're in first place in the A10 at 30-12, 18-2, sorry, in conference, 30-12 overall. So they're the toast of the conference, and this is one where Hockman goes the full game, gave up all 6 earned runs, had 9 strikeouts though, and GW was just a little too much, I think, overall for them. But really, the scoring was mostly in the last inning. It was 2-2 going into the seventh, or sorry, I'm sorry, 3-1 going into the seventh, and then SLU gets 2 back to tie it before George Washington ultimately puts them away in the bottom of the ninth.
I got very confused looking at George Washington's softball schedule because I had the screen smaller and it was cutting off the 1, and I was like 30-3, and then I looked through and they had a bunch of losses. I was like, that doesn't make sense, but yeah, no, good effort from the Billikens to snag at least 1 game from GW. So
Yeah, respectable for sure.
upcoming games against George Mason, it'll be the last of the season. All on, I believe 2 are on the 7th and then 1 on the 8th. I have them all as 5-7 because I'm a complete moron.
No, that's right. It's noon and 2 on the 7th, noon on the 8th, and those are all at SLU.
Yeah, so of course our guy Colin Suhre will be on the call as he mentioned, and we'll maybe we'll get him back on again as we talked about for the A10 tournament coverage. Pete, I really think people are gonna dig this episode, man. I mean, I think we had such a pro join us to start. I think it raised our level of like focus. I think we locked in on this one because of Colin.
He's comfortable on the mic. He's a young, hungry up and comer, but he knows what he's doing on the microphone, and it's a good change of pace. We've had a few guys on lately who are even younger.
Yes.
The incoming recruits who all signed in the fall, and hopefully we'll start lining up the guys who are signing here in the spring pretty soon, so we can get to know the whole class. But yeah, it was good to have an actual pro on the mic with us this week.
Any last words for the folks before I wrap it up?
Oh, I got nothing. Just support your spring sports while they're still playing, and we'll have more hopefully a lot more women's basketball news actually soon. Once we start figuring out the names of the recruits, once we have the rest of the staff made official, I expect in the next 1 to 2 weeks we'll know a lot more about what the women's program looks like.
Yeah, I want to thank our listeners for not only listening in general, but maybe kind of not putting up, so to speak, with our change in format with having Colin on and talking about baseball first. But I really hope we made it worth your while to stick around for the basketball segment and stick through that baseball segment. I thought it was a great talk with him. He was awesome. But that wraps up the week that was in Billiken Athletics. First of all, get some salsa from Two Men in a Garden. Not an ad yet. Follow us on Twitter at Midtown Mad Pod, at Peter is a tweeter, at Zach Miller MMP. We also appreciate any and all suggestions you might have for the show. Our DMs are wide open, guys. Send us, well, not anything, but send us some constructive criticism, some questions, comments, anything at all that you might have for the show. Go subscribe to the show on all platforms. That's a requirement. If you haven't left a review, we highly suggest it, but not a requirement. And don't be afraid to drop us 5 stars as well as that review. And as always, Pete, go Bills.
Go Bills.